right, so today we're going to be talking about investor management for apartment syndication. When it comes to these portals, there are other portals, and this portal IMS does have a CRM, but most of the CRMs that are included within the portals that I see out there, whether it be IMS or Syndication Pro or InvestNext or Juniper Square or whatever they are usually have a kind of what I would call a lightweight CRM. So I wouldn't recommend using it because they don't really spend a lot of time and energy and effort and focus on it. Really, you need to use something like Active Campaign that can give you some more flexibility and some options to be able to use, be able to stay in connection or to stay in contact with it. And Candace is asking, do I have slides I'm showing? No, right now I'm just going off the registration page. I may do a couple of things here with my notepad or something like that, depending on what I would decide to do. But for right now, no, I don't have any slides that I'm going over. All right, so with the Active Campaign, all of our emails that come in, obviously we have our Multifamily Investor Nation email list, if you will. That's actually done through MailChimp, and we keep them separate because if somebody doesn't go to our website and fill out the registration form that they want to be one of our investors, they don't get onto our list in Active Campaign. They have to go through that process first, and we don't force or import emails that we get for people who show up to our webinars and stuff like that and then import them into Active Campaign. Everything is kept for the Multifamily Investor Nation inside of MailChimp, and then we take that information and send out, with the webinars and different events, different things like that we're doing to just that list. And if an investor does go to our website, and you'll see if I go back to this page here, every page on our website has this button on the top right-hand corner that says Join the Passive Investor Club. It also has this form right here for joining the Passive Investor Club. And if an investor goes here and fills this out, they go straight into our Active Campaign. And then on the back end, we have our process for making sure that we schedule the investor phone call with them and have some follow-ups in place to make sure that we can make that contact and that touch with them. So even though we do primarily 506 Charlie investments, which means that we're allowed to market the offering, and we don't necessarily have to have a pre-existing relationship with our investors. We don't have to have phone calls with our investors. However, we choose to have phone calls with our investors, regardless as to whether or not the SEC requires us to, because we want to make sure that we create that relationship and that connection with our investors. And if you can create that relationship and that connection with your investors, they will want to invest with you more and stick with you more. Because if they just go to your website and fill out a form and then they never hear from you, even though you don't have to, they're not gonna want to invest with you, or they'll forget who you are in a few months when you have an actual offering to present to them. But what you want to make sure that you're doing is you're creating some consistencies in whatever you are doing with your process, right? And the only way you can do that is to make sure that you have a process and make sure that your team is actually following it. And in the beginning, it's going to be you. You are going to be the team, you and maybe another partner or two that you might have that's kind of helping you with your apartment syndication business. So that's one of the biggest distinctions that we have with our group, is that we run our apartment syndication group as a business. It's not a hobby. It's not a side job. It's actually our full-time job. It's actually our full-time business, right? It's actually, we have full-time, when I say we have 30 people working for us, we have 30 full-time people that are working with PassiveInvesting.com. And as you saw on our page there with our team, we have people in finance, we have people in asset management and acquisitions and investor relations, and on our debt fund, we have loan processors and loan servicers, and there's a whole team of people that are working together inside of our group. We didn't start that way, right? So we started small with just the 3 managing partners, and we grew to this. And the way we were able to grow to this is because we do charge an asset management fee on our properties, but those asset management fees we don't take home ourselves. We use those asset management fees to continue to expand and grow our team so that our team can grow as our portfolio grows. Okay. Now, let me actually just share my screen for something with you real quick. So I do want to go over this with you. I know some of you might have actually heard me do this before, but I think it wouldn't be good if I did not go over this with you. So let me pull something up here and go over an important, no, I don't want to update, but it updated for me anyway. So let's just see what this thing does. It is updating. Give me just a moment here. I always hate it when things update in the middle of trying to use them. It actually asked me if I didn't want to do it or redo it later, and it didn't even stay up there long enough for me to say, remind me later. So let's do this. Share screen, present, connect, accept. And I'm going to do that. All right, so let me share this new screen with you here, which is this one right here. So I want you to get out a piece of paper with me right now and go through this process, because it'll be a good process for you to go through to be able to fully understand how you can properly manage your investors so that they will want to invest with you for many, many years. So this is you have to understand this mindset if you want to be able to do that. Okay. All right. So first thing I want you to do is I want you to draw a triangle on your piece of paper just like this. Okay. And actually, I made it a little bit too big, so I'm just going to redo that real quick here. Just like this. Okay. Big old triangle on your piece of paper. And I'm not the best artist, so bear with me if I'm not that good. But in the middle of this, I want you to write the words investor triad. Okay. Investor triad is what I want you to put on there. And at the top of this triangle, I want you to write the words no, the word no, and on the bottom left, like, and on the bottom right, trust. So this is no, like, and trust. And some of you are going, oh, I've heard this before. Trust me, stick with me. I know you probably heard something similar to this, but this is an important concept for you to fully understand when it comes to setting up your process for your investors. So I'm going to do a quick poll here. So for those of you who are actually paying attention to the webinar instead of just having it in the background, go find your chat box right now and get ready to answer. Okay. So in the chat box right now, what I'd like for you to do is I would like for you to type in and let me know of these three things, know, like, and trust, which one is the most important? Is it no? Is it like? Or is it trust? So go ahead and type it in there now, and then we will go through. All right, great. Love it when everybody is participating. This is awesome. I got a lot of responses here. This is great. So I have trust, like, no, trust, 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 no, trust, all three, no, 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 trust, trust, no, all three, trust, 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 trust. And this one, somebody in here, for investing, trust, hands down. Can't invest if they don't know you. Trust, trust, trust. So Brian has probably heard this before, because most of you, when you first think about this, but somebody just put on here, I trust my ex-wife, I still don't like her. Laugh out loud. That's funny. All three. So when you first think about this, most people will think about it as being either like or trust. There's actually very few likes on here. It was actually mostly trust, right? But the most important when it comes to kind of putting together your process is this top one. This is no. And you might be thinking that doesn't sound right, like no. But you got to think about it this way. In order for people to be able to be in your fold, if you will, and to be able to ever have an opportunity to like or trust you, they have to first know you. And then, so if they don't, if nobody knows you, then you can set up a process for managing investors, but you're never going to have any investors to manage, right? So you have to make sure that you don't miss that first step, which is getting people to know you. Why do you think we spend so much time doing these webinars? We want people to be able to learn who we are and know who we are, and then they now can kind of come through this process with us. And we know that the majority of the people that come to our webinars, we're helping them out, we're giving back, we're providing value to them. And they might not necessarily ever invest with us, but it helps us to be able to get our name out there and get people to know who we are, and it helps us to be able to fill our funnel with investors that want to invest with us as well. So there's a process, and there's a mindset or a thought behind the madness of us doing weekly webinars every single week. It is a lot of work, but it's something that we feel has been very beneficial to our success, is being able to be out there and providing lots of value to everybody. Because if you've followed us for any length of time, we don't hold back. We give you everything that we want, that we do. We're gonna share it with you, because we don't have some sort of like paid coaching program that we're going to sell you on the back end to try to, oh, we're not going to tell you about that, because that's inside of the program that you got to buy, right? That's not how we work. You ask us a question, we're going to give it to you, right? All right. So once people actually get to the point of knowing you, What happens is they're going to do two things. They're going to go down this path, and they're going to either, usually this happens in a matter of seconds. It's about 30 seconds somebody can determine as to whether or not they like you or not, right? So within a matter of 30 seconds, they're going to basically say, okay, I now know who they are, and I'm going to come down to this channel right here. Okay, so to the likeness side. Now, there will be a certain number of people that won't like you, and they will come over here, and you'll never hear from them again. It's not a problem. Those are not people that you need to focus on. You must focus on the people that actually like you for who you are. You don't want to try to be somebody you're not. You want to be you and true to yourself and be transparent and be in high integrity for who you are instead of trying to be somebody you're not. And that way you will attract the people that want to be around you, and that will eventually get to the point of coming from this likeness phase and coming over to this trust, right? You want people to get to the point that they trust you so much that they want to now invest their hard-earned dollars with you. This is where you want them to get, because once they get to that point, that's when they're going to start sending you, 100,000, maybe 200,000. If you're really lucky, $1 million plus, right? There's going to be a certain point in time where you have to build up to that point where they trust you enough to send you money. Now, what's really cool here is once they trust you, this process goes back around and comes back up to no. And you might be asking yourself, well, how does that work? How can they get to know you again? This is actually what we call the referral process. Once they actually trust you enough to wire you money, and you actually are doing what you say you're going to do, and they're seeing the results, they get excited about it, and they're going to send you and refer to you their family, friends, and colleagues. That's how it works. And this right here is is where the kind of, I would say, like the gold is, right? Because these people that come in and once they know who you are, they skip this whole process right here of the likeness phase. They skip that completely. They go straight from this knowing phase up here, and they jump straight down to trust. It's what they call an inherent trust based on the relationship. And so if you can get to the point of getting to those referrals, which does take time, you got to produce results. But once you get there and you've gone through that process, we get a lot of referrals right now because we have a lot of people that have seen results from some of the assets that they have been in, and we have been able to show them results. And so now we're sending their family, friends, and colleagues to us, and we do get a lot of referrals, and you jump that process. Now, when it comes to this process, how do you get them down to these various stages, right? Well, of course, getting people to know you, it's all about, raising awareness or raising capital and kind of talking to people and networking and, being interviewed on podcasts, and you having your own podcast, you're building out your own authority platform. We've done several webinars on raising capital. You can go to our YouTube channel and just type into the search box in our YouTube channel, Raising Capital, and you'll see all of the different videos that we've done specifically on trying to find investors. And that's that knowing phase. And then once they actually know you, and now let's just say at this point right here, they're where on the likeness side, they're now on your email list. Well, one of the things that we also do is we actually put these people on our physical mailing list. Actually, yes, it's called the USPS is what we do. And we do that because that's another way that we can help put a fence around our investors, is making sure that they hear a lot of content from us, and we're shaping and framing their minds. And so this process right here is all about the content phase. Okay, this going from knowing to liking is a very fast process. It happens very quickly. Like I said, usually within 30 seconds. Okay. And once they actually like you, they're going to follow you, and now you're going to hopefully be on their email. They're going to hopefully be on your email list if you're doing things properly. And then when you have a phone call with them, you can also get their mailing address as well, so you can start sending them some stuff on a regular basis. The content phase is where you're going to be providing a ton of content to them, whether it be through an email newsletter. We actually do that ourselves. We have I'll just say monthly email. We also have our offerings that we send to them. So when we have a new deal, we'll send them our offerings. We also send them a physical printed newsletter. And let me actually go get a copy of one of those so you can actually see what that looks like. Give me just a moment here. I'll talk with you as I'm walking throughout, because inside of that content phase is how you can move somebody from just liking you to actually trusting you, right? Because the more and more they hear from you, the more and more they're going to likely want to get more information from you and stay connected with you. So it's got to be content that is very relevant and is content that they actually want to see. Okay, I'm going to stop my screen share here for just a moment, just so you guys can see this a little bit better. This is actually our physical printed newsletter. So we actually have these printed up. You can kind of see it's almost like a magazine style, if you will. This one right here is, I think, 16 pages. This was our Christmas edition, so we kind of have some more themed Christmas stuff on here, whatever. Inside of this newsletter, one of the things that we do, when you first open it up, it has a sheet that falls out. This is actually a coloring page of the front cover. You can see here, okay? And we do this because this actually goes to our, this actually will go to their kids. Their kids can actually be involved in this, and they might ask questions about what does this mean to be a passive investor and stuff like that. But the purpose of this is to get them to get their kids to actually color it, and then they can, of course, put it on their refrigerator, things like that. And then when they actually have friends and family come over, they are now helping to promote us because it has our name and logo and stuff like that on it. And in addition to that, usually in the back inside of the cover of the newsletter, we do a word search just like this, kind of give them something fun to do and look forward to. We actually thought about removing that, and we did some of our investor dinners last year, and the investors were like, no, don't get rid of that. We really enjoy that. We look forward to doing that every single month when it comes in. That's one of the first things that they do is they open that up and they do that word search, which is kind of interesting. This is just another version of it. This is actually from our October edition. Oddly enough, this is actually when we announced to our investors that we're going to be acquiring some select service hotels. So this was a kind of an article that I wrote in there about that. But you can see the same thing, just kind of this one actually I think was only 12 pages. So depending on how much content we have, we'll do, actually this was 16 pages as well. So depending on how much content we have, this gets physically printed and mailed to the investors every month. So we try to get it out by the first week of the month, and it gets mailed to them. And this actually gets put inside of a white envelope with their address on it, and mailed to them. And this is one of the other things that we do in this newsletter is each one of the managing partners tries to write an article in the newsletter, and a couple of select people from our team will write an article in the newsletter, and then we have an investor that we'll select that will get interviewed, and their story will also be put inside of the newsletter. So you can actually see that here, right? So just that investor, kind of their story, how they got to find, how they heard about us, and why they continue to invest with us. And it's been this newsletter we get great reviews off of it, and it's something it is a lot of work to do every month, but it's something that is very important, and it's a way for us to be able to keep our investors close to us, right? Because we feel like that's very important to want to make sure that we can keep them close to what we are trying to do. Okay, so we talked about how to set up a process, how to put a fence around your investors. That's one of the things that we do, is to try to separate ourselves, as provide as much value and content for our investors as much as we can. So we're providing those monthly emails, we're sending out the offering documents, we're sending out the physical newsletters. We try to have a lot of transparent communication. This is actually the next bullet point down here, how to implement a transparent communication process to your investors. And so for us, we're communicating before a deal, but really, once an investor invests with us, every single month we send out an email update informing the investors of the status of the property from the prior month. And so it's a monthly email update that every asset that they're in, they get an update to tell them the status, or the kind of the current status and the condition, or if there's anything good or bad or whatever about that property, they're aware of it. So they don't have to be thinking about that. If there's any changes in distributions, we put it in there. Stuff about K1s, we put in there, right? Now, since we talked about this, I just mentioned K1s, let me go ahead and just mention that here, since it's one of the last bullet points, and then I'll talk about the second to last one there in just a moment as well. But issuing K1s can be a very tedious process because in the beginning, when you only have a couple of assets, it's not as bad, but you have to early on, even in December, get prepared for these K1s. And that way in January, you're teed up right away to be able to send your information to your CPA so they can get those K1s issued out to your investors. You get the books finalized and reconciled, and everything is finalized so that you can hit the target of making sure that the investors get their scheduled K1s by March 15th. We try to do it by March 1st, and usually we'll have the majority of them done by March 1st. There might be one or two that kind of laggers or lingers around up until that March 15th timeframe. But I'll tell you, one of the biggest complaints that I hear from investors, from other operators, is the delay in getting their K1s. My wife and I are actually personally invested in about 17 different operators with about 57 different investments, LP investments with those different operators. And I've had operators. I even had one last year that didn't get us the K1 until October of that year. And so, of course, that holds us up from being able to file our personal returns until we get that K1. And that's where the frustration comes from investors is hold those K1s that consistently or that are constantly being delayed. So make sure that you put a lot of time and energy and effort into making sure that that gets done and gets done properly, so there is no delay in your investors getting their K1s. And we don't mail them out to them. We actually just upload them to their investor portal, to our secure portal. They can go into their portal and download those K1s as they need them. It makes it for a lot easier process for them to be able to access them in the future as well, if for some reason they miss or they can't find it. All right, so how to set up your distribution schedule to benefit your investors. So there's a couple of schools of thought here. So some investors, some people will say, oh, we do quarterly distributions, and some we do monthly distributions. Well, we do monthly distributions, but we have a strategic reason behind why we do monthly distributions. And I don't think a lot of people really talk about this, but a lot of people that do quarterly and that don't do monthly say that it's just too much work for them to have to do monthly distributions. Well, with the advent of software, it doesn't actually take that much time to do monthly distributions. It does take time, but it doesn't take that much time. So to be able to go in there, run a waterfall on the software, spit out a Nacha file, which has all the ACH information in there, upload that ACH file to the bank, and it just sends out and processes it. It's not that complicated. So that's more of an excuse of why not to do something. And so when I look at something, I try to figure out how can we do something instead of like, hey, let's try to figure out how we can't do something. All right. So it's a little bit of a different, more of a different outlook. But the distributions we do on a monthly basis because of a couple of reasons. So number one, it's another touch point with our investors that they get to see in their bank account that we're hitting their bank account every single month. Month after month, like clockwork, they're seeing that cash show up in their account. And so it provides them a level of comfort and security so that they want to invest more with us. Investors who take, operators that take 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years to start to cash flow, a lot of those investors will not invest with you again until they start seeing the results from their first investment. So if it takes you a long time for them to see their first result, they're not going to invest with you again. So that's a strategy for us, that we want to make sure that our investors see those quick wins right away, because we want them to want to invest with us again and again and again, right? And then from a marketing perspective, hitting their bank account every month and them seeing that, the next deal that comes out, they're going to jump on it right away. And it's a whole other thought process of keeping them attached to you, or putting a fence around your investors, if you will. If you have solid communications, you have consistent cash flows, you have transparent communications, and your processes are in place where they can see that things are organized, they're going to want to invest with you for a long time. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing our repeat investor rate go up. Because last year, we did some analysis and we were about 62 to 63% repeat investor rate. Whereas in January, this deal we're closing tomorrow, we have a deal out of Fort Myers, Florida. It's actually our largest deal to date. It's a $109 million acquisition, and we're raising $38 million to acquire that. So everything's already set up and ready to go, and we'll be closing that deal tomorrow. And with that, with that particular deal, we had an 81% repeat investor rate, which is just phenomenal. I mean, this is great. It confirms to us that we are doing things the right way, and investors like what we are doing because they're willing to put more money with us, right? And also they're starting to refer. They're not starting to, but they're now referring their family and friends and colleagues, and so we're just exponentially increasing the number of investors that are in our fold. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop talking now from a content perspective, and I'm going to move over to some questions that have come in, and go ahead and try to take some of these questions that have actually come into the software here. So if you have some questions, go ahead and type them in. John has a question to kick us off here. How often do you have calls with your current investors group, monthly, quarterly, et cetera? Are they group calls or individual? So we don't specifically have like a regularly scheduled phone call with like our group of investors or with investors individually. There are a few that we do stay in contact with that want to have some additional relationship or conversations with us. But for the most part, we're not having a regularly scheduled phone call with all of our investors. Now, with that said, we did recently hire on our director of investor education, Whitney Elkins Hutton, and she is actually heading up a masterclass that we're doing to our investors every single week. And so she has been educating our investors on various things. And so that's another touch point specifically for our investors that will allow us to be able to have some additional kind of conversations with them or touch points with them. But outside of that, we don't really have that, John. But what we do in the beginning, when somebody fills out the form on our website, they go to passiveinvesting.com, they fill out the form, we actually will attempt to schedule a phone call with them. As a matter of fact, when they fill out that form, they directly go to a calendar for them to schedule a phone call on our calendar to have a conversation with us. If they don't fill that out, then one of our support staff will reach out to them and try to get them scheduled for one of our investor relations team members so that we can understand their investment goals to make sure that they're a right fit for us and vice versa. And also to just kind of answer any questions that they might have about investing with us. All right. So the next question coming in here is, what was the name of the system for the back end? So the back end process that we're using is IMS, Investor Management Services. It's owned by RealPage. And so that's the back end process. The front end is the active campaign software. All right, do you track the ratio of referrals versus outreach? If so, what's your split? We do track that, Ali, but I don't have that information with me right now. But I would still say our outside efforts still produce more investors than, as far as like an overall lead perspective, than the referrals. But the referrals have a much higher likelihood of investing versus just an investor who goes on our website, fills out the form, and just continues to follow us. So it is a little bit of a different process there. What program do you use for sending out payments? So the ACH stuff is actually done through our portal, our investor portal. They actually will spit out the what's called a NACHA file, and that NACHA file gets uploaded to our bank. So we use a bank called First Citizens Bank. And they basically take the imported file and they'll read it and then take the money out of the account and send it out to the investors. So it's a pretty seamless and pretty easy process. What are some of your investors' common occupations? So we actually have a lot of business owners. So we have a lot of business owners, C-level executives. We do have a lot of doctors. We have a lot of lawyers, and then we also have a lot of professionals like engineers, whether it be structural engineers or architects or IT engineers. IT is a big one for us as well, but there's a big smattering across the board. We're not really heavily concentrated in one particular area versus another. All right, can a 506B or 506 Bravo syndication be implemented with this method? So yes, I mean, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do that. The one thing you have to be careful of with a 506 Bravo is that you cannot advertise your deal with a 506 Bravo. So you can market and advertise your company, but once you actually have an offering, you can't be advertising and marketing that specific offering. And as long as you're creating and establishing that prior existing relationship with your investors, then you can present to them, those are the ones that you have that relationship with a 506B or 506 Bravo offering. Again, I'm not not an attorney, and I don't know why I said again, but probably because I've said it in multiple webinars before, but I'm not an attorney. I know a lot about this topic, but I would highly recommend that you reach out to a securities attorney. We actually use one. His name is Dugan Kelly, out of Texas, Prosper, Texas. He's with Kelly Clark Law. You can Google that and get his information, but he's one that we use, and does a really good job for us. And he can help you navigate through the kind of Securities and Exchange Commission rules and regulations, if you will. All right. Well, let's see. Oh, I got one last question. Did you ever establish a Regulation A raise? We're in the process, Kevin, of doing that right now. So the process usually takes about 4 to 6 months, which is why most people don't do it. But we are in the process of doing that. It'll be a $75 million Regulation A fund, and it'll likely launch in about May, June, or July, somewhere in there. I give it a little bit of a range because it just depends on how fast the SEC responds to our requests and how long it takes us to respond to their requests, and you go back and forth and have to get that approval process. All right, well, no more questions have come in, so I want to thank everyone for being here. Appreciate that, and let's see what the topic is for next week. Next week's topic is going to be securing financing. Securing financing, I'll share my screen here. Securing financing for apartment syndication. Danny Randazzo, who is our finance lead managing partner with PassiveInvesting.com, is going to be here with you for that. So we'll send out an email to be able to announce to you about that next webinar. You can also go to multifamilyinvestornation.com/MFIN webinar, and you can register early if you want to that webinar. We'll be talking about what are the various types of financing available for multifamily. Oh, there it is. It's in the chat box there. You can just type it into the chat box or click the link in the chat box. What is agency debt? What is the difference between non-recourse versus recourse? Should you use a debt broker or go direct, etc.? So that's going to be next Tuesday, same time, 11 a.m. And thank you guys for being here and participating. And we'll look forward to seeing you back here next week.